All the Problems with the Mandalorian. Chapter 1, The Mandalorian. We start off with the sound of a tracking fob. We're on a nice planet and we see the Mandalorian walking up to a cantina. In the cantina, there's some thugs harassing a blue fishman who looks like he's from Star Trek instead of Star Wars.
Please, I have credits. Take them.
Here, Fishman is getting roughed up. You can see the giant mug tipping over. The giant mug tips. You can see the liquid go all over the table. By the way, this thug has a robot arm. Now look at the table. The credits aren't there, and the table's totally dry. This occurs because they filmed the scene in 2 different times. So it looks like the thugs are going to kill the blue fishman, and the Mandalorian opens the door to the cantina and is standing in the doorway like he's some sort of badass. The thug says, "You spilled my drink," and the Mando goes to the bar to order a drink. Again, the table is perfectly dry. Mando's at the bar. The thug says, "I'm talking to you, Mando. Look at Mando's right shoulder. Blue top, beige bottom." Just a moment later, the very next scene, you see the cape is completely over his shoulder. The thugs approach Mando. On his right is Baldy. On the left is the squid face. He's hard to see, but if you look past the squid's tentacles is the third guy with the beanie and that had the robot arm. Very next shot, Baldy scratches Mando's chest plate. If you look on the far right, robot arm is standing right there. The very next scene, the bartender says "here" and begins to slide the mug to Mando. If you look on the left, robot arm is now missing. He's not there anymore. He should be standing right there up against the bar. And literally the very next scene, there's robot arm again.
He says you spilled his drink. It's fine. It's on me.
So he asks him if that's real Beskar steel and scrapes it with his knife. Dead center of Mando's right side, our left, right in between the 2 middle dents, there's the scrape. If you look at the bottom of the image, there's the knife. He just ran the knife against Mando's armor and created a scrape against his plate. He scratched the paint, if nothing else. After all of this battle, there's no mark on his armor from the blade scratching against it. Same here. He walks out with fish face. He's about to get a transport back to his ship. Look at his armor. There's no mark from the blade scraping against his armor.
Here.
Mando grabs the mug, smashes it on Robot Arm's face. He presumably is knocked out. Mando then grabs Squid Face and slams his face into the bar. Squid Face takes a hell of a hit, and you would think he would be knocked out as well. Mando then blocks Baldy from getting stabbed, turns the knife on him, and stabs him in the butt. Very next moment, Squidface makes a run for the door. He's not stunned, he's not knocked out, but he gets right up and apparently runs for the door, although I think he would be holding his face or be knocked out. Fishface is watching the battle. As you can see, there's no credits, and the table is perfectly dry. Squidface gets wrapped up by Mando's cable as he's running out the door. Look at Squidface. He doesn't have a bloody nose, bump, scratch, broken anything. It's like he never got his face smacked into the bar. Naturally, Mando's pissed for getting shot, so he pulls his blaster and shoots back. Mando proceeds to shoot the electrical box on the left side of the door, which we'll presume was on purpose, not a stray shot. He shoots the box, which then makes the circular door close and chop the squid face in half. Now use some common sense. That's not how door switches work. If you shot the box with a blaster, you're going to destroy the box or disable the box. This is basic electrical application. While Star Wars is a different universe, basic laws do apply. So if you've shot the box, you've now destroyed the circuitry and cut off the current, the electricity, the function of the door. By shooting the box, you're disabling the door. You're not going to activate it to make it close. If the door is open and you shoot the box, the door is going to remain locked open. On the adverse, if the door was closed and you shot the box, the door would be locked closed. Or I will give you this. If the door was already closing and you shot the box, it is possible for the door to complete its circuit and finish closing. However, an open door that you shoot the control box on is not going to make the door close. At best, if the door had some sort of failsafe while it has current to keep it open, and then you cut the current and just by the weight of the door itself falls or drops or closes, fine, but you can hear the door after he shoots it. The actual mechanical motor is closing the door. If you shoot the control box, you're disabling the door, not hitting the switch to close the door. So by him shooting it, while it's cool and sounds good, is not realistic. The door would remain locked open. You will also notice the lights on the box are functioning, even after he shot it. Then just a moment later, all the lights go out, not only on the box, but apparently in the entire bar. You can argue that the bar got dark because of the outside exterior light coming in. Fine. But the box, as you can see, fizzles out and is completely dark. Therefore, he killed the box, which once again would not activate the door. I love the door scene. I think it's very cool that he did that to chop the guy in half. I'm not trying to hate, but it doesn't work. It's not realistic that if you shoot the damn control box, that the door is going to shut. If he would have thrown something at it, he could have tossed a mug at it, he could have, with another grapple, made his grapple hit the button, fine, the door would close. But shooting the box and destroying it to the point where now it's totally dead is not going to make the door close. So he chops Squid Face in half, then he immediately turns to Fish Face. Look at the table. The table is dry, and now credits have magically appeared again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You have my heartfelt gratitude.
Fish Face, with the horrible makeup, of course, is thankful that Mando took care of the thugs.
Here, you take my credits. Buy yourself a drink. Is that a bounty puck? Is that me? There must be some mistake. I can get you more credits.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
So from the beginning, Mando captures this guy, has him in cuffs, and is walking ahead of him. Not too far ahead, but why would you have your back turned to a bounty? He could have ran off, he could have had a weapon, he could have done anything, he could have committed suicide. So right from the beginning, the Mandalorian is showing his noobness. He's got his bounty behind him, just assuming he's going to be walking along with him. Granted, Fish Face is nobody and probably doesn't want to get shot or killed or whatever, but it just shows from the beginning that the Mandalorian is not thinking. And by the way, now that he has shot the box, which has killed the door function, how do they leave the bar? They can't open the damn door because he shot the control box. Look at Mando's height here. He's a bit taller than Fish Face. Here again, you see that Mando is taller than Fish Face. Notice the height difference here. It's much less. That's because they're using different actors. Here you can see Mando and Fish Face are about the same height. Just a moment ago, Mando was considerably taller. This guy with his flute calls a transport to take Mando back to his ship. Mando says, "No droids." Remember that because this is very important throughout the entire show that he has a problem with droids. Why everyone parks their ships so far away out of eyesight on this planet from the bar makes no sense to me, but I guess this is just where everyone parks. It just doesn't make sense because out on this ice, there's the threat of going through the ice, security of your ship, you're far from your ship, but also there's this creature underneath the ice that literally eats things, eats people. So why would you be parking your ships all the way out on this ice to the point of you need to have this guy transport you? So Fish Face says, "You're looking for Ravenax, right? Because everyone involved here knows that there's the danger of Ravenax. They can come out from right under the ice and gobble you up. Yet the port is out here way out on the ice where the Ravenax are. Also, look in the distance. What do you see? Mando's ship, the Razor Crest. They're literally driving or floating past Mando's ship. Yet they're showing you as if they're on the way to Mando's ship. Most people won't notice it. It's blurry in the background, but that's Mando's ship right there. So they literally fly by it to then come back to it. They right now are hovering past Mando's ship. Look on the left, there's the Razor Crest. So as they're hovering over to the port, you're going to see there's a Razor Crest on the left, and they're hovering past it in the background. Also notice there's not another ship before the Razor Crest. So if you look in the background, well now it's very blurry, just to the right of the engine in the distance is the Razor Crest that they just floated past. And then in literally the very next scene, oh look, it's the Razor Crest that we just pulled up on, even though we just hovered past it a minute ago in the blurry background. Why? Because there's no other ship before the Razor Crest. It's the only ship that they could pass by. So they literally filmed the scene, passing it, blurred it out in the background, and then did another scene where they're pulling up to it.
Here we are.
Kidding me, right?
Get out.
I'll hire a delivery cruiser.
No big deal. They won't come out here and I'll pay for it.
Trying to make it pleasant.
Hey, it's time to go. Let's settle up.
It's pretty sad when your blue fish face bounty is talking smack about your ship.
I'd stay off the ice if I were you.
You think there's really something to worry about? Open the hatch! Open the hatch!
So the guy that transported them drives off and gets swallowed up by this creature, which is kind of neat. It's funny. And the creature, of course, starts coming straight for the Mandalorian ship. Why is unclear. There's other ships and it comes for them.
Dang ferret, that was close. Stay off the ice. That's the understatement of the millennium.
This giant walrus ice monster has now got its huge teeth in the Mandalorian ship. Why would you park your ship out here with the risk of getting your ship destroyed?
Take us down. What are you doing?
There's some fan service, the sound of the Millennium Falcon with the motors winding down, which doesn't make any sense. The creature is biting into his ship, but it's not making the engines fail, nor is it the hyperdrive failing. He tries to take off, and it makes that sound, which isn't even appropriate for the situation, nor is it the Millennium Falcon, so why are you using that sound? Cheap fan service.
It's gonna take us under. Where are you going? We gotta do something. We gotta get out of here.
The whole reason that they parked his ship out on this ice, that whole setup was to give you the fan service of the Mandalorian grabbing the rifle that looks just like Boba Fett's weapon in the Star Wars Christmas special. They literally went through this whole scene of however many minutes to set up him grabbing that weapon and shocking the walrus creature.
I am Boba Fett. The ship you seek is nearby.
That was the whole point, is to play on your nostalgia of Boba Fett. Yet, he's not Boba Fett. He's using a variation of the weapon that Boba Fett had in the Christmas special. So he shocks the creature lets go, and he flies off. As they're trying to take off, the Ravenak is chewing on the landing gear of the Razor Crest, preventing them from taking off. The Ravenak is so strong and pulling so hard on the landing gear that you physically can see the landing gear get pulled out from the ship. You can also see the sparks flying from the damage that it creates. So now the left landing gear is protruding out farther than the right landing gear. It's basically dangling now because it's been pulled out of its socket. It's not completely ripped off the ship, but it's pulled out farther and damaged. So the landing gear should not function. Even though the landing gear was just damaged and yanked out of socket, as soon as Mando breaks free from the Ravenak and the ship starts to take off, both landing gears retract just fine and normal as if nothing happened. The landing gear should not be able to retract as it is all out of whack and out of joint. This also causes problems for later when he lands. The landing gear is working just fine. Look at Mando's armor. There's no scratch mark from the bald thug's knife in the bar. That mark is apparently forgotten and gone for the rest of the show. It never happened. Look in the window. You see a big round shape, presumably one of the engines of the Razor Crest.
I like your ship. She's classic. Razor Crest, am I right? Pre-Empire?
Very next shot, the engine seems to have disappeared. He says, Razor Crest, right? Pre-Empire. How would you know that it's called the Razor Crest? So there's a conflict here. Mandalorians are known. Yet the guys in the bar thought they were tough guys and just tried to take on a Mandalorian as if he's unknown or unimportant. So if Blue Fishface knows the Razor Crest, why wouldn't those thugs? Maybe Blue Fishface is a little more intelligent and worldly, but it doesn't make sense that he would know the name of the ship of the Mandalorian unless the Mandalorian is known throughout various parts in the galaxy. That's what they're establishing here, as if his ship and him are known, yet thugs tried to fight him. Blue Fishface should not know the name of his ship. It's just a cheap way of them saying, hey, here's the name of the ship, everybody. And he says pre-Empire, like this guy knows spaceships. Maybe he does. There's not a problem. But the fact that he knows the name of this particular ship means that it's an important ship like the Millennium Falcon. Next scene, wide shot. The engine is missing from the window.
I have a lot of credits, by the way. That's why I offered to hail the cruiser. How much are they paying you? Is it true you guys never take off your helmets?
Now that's a totally break in Star Wars lore, because if you know anything about Mandalorians, or you've watched Star Wars and actually paid attention, first of all, in Attack of the Clones, we see Jango Fett with his helmet off. We also see Boba Fett as a child, but we still see Boba Fett. If you've watched the Clone Wars or read any comics or books, Mandalorians take off their helmets all the time. That has never been established or a rule that Mandalorians do not remove their masks. So it's just silly that he's saying, as if it's a known thing in the galaxy, the Mandalorians do not remove their masks when they do all the time. Just moments later, Fishface gets up to go use the vac tube. Look out the window. The engine has reappeared.
I think I have to use the vac tube. I mean, I could do it here, but if you've never seen a fledgling Mithril evacuate your thorax, you're a lucky guy, trust me. Clearly, there's nowhere for me to go. So, I'm going to look for that vac tube if it's all the same to you.
Very next shot, look at Mando's bottom right of his mask. To our left, you can see there's some rust or dirt there on the curved part, kind of like the nose or trunk part of the mask. There's also a slight mark under his left eye. So the Mandalorian doesn't say anything, doesn't even turn his head, nothing. Like, sure, go ahead, go around my ship. If you were a very experienced bounty hunter and you've got cameras everywhere and you know that your opponent is way overmatched, what would you care that he's going around your ship? But does the Mandalorian really know this bounty? This guy could have a bomb, he could hit buttons, he could do all kinds of damage in a matter of minutes to the Mandalorian ship, and yet he just lets him go downstairs and look around for the bathroom.
Found it. Thanks. It might take a while. I'm molting.
So the first thing Blue Fishface does when he gets downstairs, he finds a panel and starts hitting a bunch of buttons, and a weapons locker opens with a ton of weapons. Fishface then proceeds to close the gun case by simply pushing the purple buttons only on the right side 3 times. To open it, he had to hit different number combinations. To close it, he's just hitting the purple buttons. How would he know this? How would he guess this? If you guessed one way to open it, wouldn't you guess it would be the same way to close it as well? First of all, why didn't Blue Fishface immediately grab a weapon? Second, any random stranger can come on your ship, press some random buttons, and open your gun safe? How does that make any sense? That anyone can just randomly open your gun locker? It's ridiculous. There should be a special code, a key card, a retina scan, fingerprint, something. But a non-consequential Blue Fishface just opened up your weapons locker like it was a shoebox.
Oh, this feels a lot better. I haven't evacuated since the solstice.
Now, my presumption is that the Mando has some sort of sensor up in the cockpit that tells him the weapons locker has been opened. But by that point, he could be in trouble because someone's in his weapons locker. Look on the left towards the rear of the ship where the main ramp is. There's 1, 2, and 3 carbonite blocks there. So he's looking at the carbonite prisoners, and next thing you know, the Mandalorian is right behind him. Why would you let him down in the belly of your ship, looking around, touching things? It's already very rookie type of mistakes to be making. You shouldn't underestimate your bounties. There's a reason why he's a bounty. So you shouldn't just assume to let him go around your ship freely. So the Mando throws him into what looks like a closet and he carbon freezes him. There's a few problems here. First of all, he didn't have to charge up the system or prepare the chamber, and it's a very open chamber, like an open closet. And he just pushes him in there and then instantly freezes him. The guy doesn't try to run or move. He just gets frozen. The other problem is, from the closet, he somehow has him standing in a row with the other bounties that he has in carbonite. Now, in The Empire Strikes Back, the carbonite could float to Slave 1, but to move it inside this small belly of the ship, angle it correctly, and stand it up seems like more work than for what one person could do. He has these carbonite blocks all organized in a row very neatly, and it just isn't very realistic that something that took a huge chamber with tons of wires and tubes and space in a mining facility is inside a ship. So sure, technology gets better and it gets smaller, but it's very hard to believe that 5 years from Return of the Jedi, they have carbonite freezing chambers on spacecraft. They arrive on Navarro. Mando's going to turn in the bounties. As you can see, the landing gear on the right was the one that was chewed up by the Ravenak, yet it is extending just perfectly fine, and he lands the weight of the ship on that landing gear with no problem. That landing gear shouldn't even have been able to be retracted into the ship, never mind re-extended back out, and then definitely not be able to hold the weight of the ship. It was literally yanked out of socket. You could see the sparks flying. It shouldn't be functioning, and even if it happened to retract and then extend again, it should not be able to hold the weight of the ship. Yet, it extends out just perfect in timing with the other landing gears, no problem, and he lands the ship as if nothing happened. Also look at the windows of the ship, the cockpit. You can see the big engine right there, right outside of the window. Mando walks into town. He's out in the open. Everyone can see him, so it doesn't appear that he's hiding or needs to hide or be inconspicuous. He's just walking along the town streets. He then walks into the guild building where he's going to meet the guild leader and collect his credits for the bounties. You can see him in the doorway. The gun stock is over his left shoulder. Just a moment later, he's walking through the cantina. You can see the gun stock is now over his right shoulder. He is literally flipped here. Whether that's a different actor with a costume that they messed up or they inverted the film itself, it's wrong. It's flipped backwards. Very next shot, the rifle stock is over his left shoulder. He walks up to Carl Weathers at the table. Note Carl Weathers' gloved hand on top of the cloth on the table, right next to the drink. His hand is on top of the cloth. Very next shot, the cloth is slightly offset from the cup and his hand is now to the right of the cloth. His hand is on the table, not resting on top of the cloth as it was just one moment ago.
Oh, that was fast. Did you catch them all? Good, I'll begin the offload.
And there they give you a very good look at his weapon, which is, again, totally paying off of Boba Fett in the Christmas special. Yet, it's not Boba Fett. And this is the problem with all of the new Star Wars from Disney, is that they try to do away with the original characters, yet they're constantly cherry picking and using all the details from the old characters. It doesn't make any sense to not just use Boba Fett if you're going to be using a weapon that looks like Boba Fett, a character that looks like Boba Fett, a character that is supposed to be a badass like Boba Fett. At the end of the day, it's fine if they want to make a show about a Mandalorian that's not Boba Fett. But if you're going to keep referencing Boba Fett, then why did you make a show that's not Boba Fett? And notice the table is empty. There's no credits on the table. Mando sets the fobs on the table, and there's credits on the table. You can see the top credit is gold, and then the second one is a reddish credit. Very next shot, there's no credits on the table. Carl is reaching into his pocket, pulling credits out, and he's about to put them on the table. Here you can see him about to set them on the table. He sets them on the table, and as you can see, the top one is silver, then reddish bronze, and then gold. The position of the credits has changed, the order from top to bottom. Also look at the fobs. The fobs are pointing at Mando, and they're close to Mando on this side of the credits. Just a moment ago, they were close to Carl. Carl had grabbed them and pulled them close to him by the cup. The cup is also missing from this shot. Very next shot, the cup is back, and look at the position of the credits. The credits are closer to Mando, and the fobs are back closer to Carl. Carl says all he has is Imperial credits. Mando tries to act like a tough guy, and he's going to grab the fobs back. Look at the position of the fobs and the credits. The fobs are again close to Mando. He's just reaching. He didn't pull them close to him yet. Also look at the credits. Gold on top, then silver, then red. Next shot, look at the credits. The red one is loose by itself. The fobs are right in front of Mando, and the other credits are kind of stacked unevenly. Also look at the position and the fold of the cloth. It's different. The girl in the far right, who when he walked in was on the left towards the door. You can see her on the far right in the background in front of the bar, the blonde with her hair combed over to the right. It's possible that she moved to the other side of the bar, but as we're pointing out all these mistakes, when they first began cutting this scene, she was on the left side of this bar, now she's on the right side. This is because they're filmed on different days or at different times. This is what causes continuity issues. If you look back just a couple images, you'll see that she's not standing there. Now she is there on the right. Very next shot, Carl puts the calamari flan on the table next to the credits. Silver one on top, red, then gold. While they're a little bit twisted, they're stacked pretty evenly. Just a moment ago, the red one was loose by itself on the side. They were also facing the Mandalorian, now they're left to right in front of the Mandalorian. There are 4 calamari there. 2 stacked on the right, 1 leaning in the middle, and then the 1 on the left next to the credits. On the right, the 2. Look at the 1 on top. It is slid towards the Mandalorian. The very right edge is flush with the right edge of the bottom calamari flan. Very next shot, Mandalorian puts the fobs back on the table. Now look at the calamari flan. The 4th one you can argue is hidden behind the stack of the ones here in front. The one that's leaning is fine in the same position. But look at the one that's offset on the top of the stack of 2. While it is still pointing towards the Mandalorian, it is also pointing off towards us. It's hanging off both edges now. Look at Mando's right hand. The red light is on his gauntlet. That red light is usually on. It was on when he came into the cantina. If you look back about 2 photos, you'll see that that red light was not on.
These are Imperial credits.
They still spin.
I don't know if you heard, but the Empire is gone.
It's all I've got.
So you're a bounty hunter. I don't know how picky you're going to be about the type of credits that you receive. Especially, you would think that you're resourceful for being a bounty hunter and you could exchange them somehow. Also, his statement is false. The Empire is not gone. They've been pretty much disbanded, but that doesn't mean that the Empire or evil just went away because the Emperor died. He had a massive fleet. He had troops all over the place. There's garrisons and ships and weapons and vehicles all over the galaxy that pertain to the Empire. So it's foolish for a bounty hunter of all people that travels around to say that the Empire's gone when they're not. The dialogue doesn't fit the reality of the situation. The Empire's not gone. They're dwindled. They're hiding with their tail between their legs. They're not as pertinent and scary at the moment. But the Empire is not gone, nor does evil just go away.
Save the theatrics. I can do calamari flan, but I can only pay half.
Fine.
Now, what bounty hunter is going to say, okay, fine, I'll just take half? You just risked your life. Now that we've introduced fuel, thank you, Rian Johnson, into Star Wars, you've burnt up fuel and resources, time, yet you're willing to take half the payment because you don't want Imperial credits, which again, you should be able to do something with anyways. It's not consistent with a bounty hunter. In fact, Boba Fett would have pulled out his blaster or just tilted his head at this guy, and this guy would have been like, oh yeah, let me pay you in full. Here they're unloading the carbonite bounties from the Razor Crest. There are 3 carbonite blocks on the left. There's the one that just came down the ramp, and he is checking that carbonite block as they're unloading it. If you look in the Razor Crest, there's a 5th block. As I showed you earlier, there were 3 blocks, then he froze Fish Face. That's 4. Somehow the Mandalorian ended up with a 5th carbonite block, and they're about to unload a 5th bounty. Out of the air, the Mandalorian came up with a 5th block. He put 4 tracking fobs on the table, but yet now we're dealing with 5 carbonite blocks. There's supposed to be 4 bounties, and somehow there's a 5th carbonite block here that is being offloaded. You just got paid half for 4 tracking fobs, and yet they're unloading 5 carbonite blocks. So you do the math. The Mandalorian is not very smart, exchanging 5 bounties for half the price of 4.
I have a bail jumper, a bail jumper, another bail jumper, a wanted smuggler.
I'll take them all.
Now, hold on. There are other members of the guild, and this is all I have.
Why so slow?
It's not slow at all, actually very busy. They just don't want to pay guild rates. They don't mind if things get sloppy.
What's your highest bounty?
Not much. 5,000?
That won't even cover fuel these days.
Again, thank you, Rian Johnson, for introducing fuel. Now all of a sudden it's a problem. Boba Fett never had a problem with fuel. Neither did Django, Cad Bane, Ara Singh. No bounty hunters have ever expressed issues with fuel. But now we've got to deal with going to the gas pumps.
There is one job.
Let's see the puck.
No puck. Face to face. Direct commission. Deep pocket.
Underworld.
All I know is no chain code. Do you want the chick or not?
Now look at the cloth. The folded edge, the brown section of the cloth is facing us. The cloth has moved. It's been turned from the previous position. He may have moved it around a little bit while he's having the conversation, but the fold was indeed pointed more towards him just a moment ago. Now it's pointing toward us. You can clearly see the blonde in the background now in the red suit, who when he came in was on the left side of the cantina. Look over Carl's right shoulder. You see a guy there with a red top on. He's been there throughout the whole scene, but just before they unloaded the carbonite, you can look back a few images. He was not there in one of the images. He has now reappeared. To the side of the cup is a bounty puck on the table. Carl is about to put down a second one. That's 2. Very next shot, there's 4 on the table. You can hear him audibly counting them out. He counted out 3. There's 4 on the table. Also look at the cloth. It has again changed position, and it is more in front of Carl now as opposed to on the side of the table. The cup has also disappeared. The cup was to the left of that rag. Now it is not in the shot. So the table has 2 pucks on it. The next scene, there's 4. Audibly, Carl calls out 4 of them. 3 bail jumpers and a smuggler. If you look at his hand here in his glove, while you can't see it, he does have a 5th puck that he's about to set on the table. So it goes from 2 pucks to 4 pucks. He calls out 4 pucks, and there's 5 pucks on the table. Look behind Carl. Red shirt is missing again. Now the cup is back on the very edge of the table. Here you can see Mando's red light on his wrist. It's on. Very next shot, he reaches for the calamari flan. His red light is off. Look at Mando's helmet. The 2 spots that I pointed out on his ship. The bottom left, his right, by his mouth, that little rust spot is gone. Also under his left eye, that little spot is gone. Carl offers Mando the bounty chit for Baby Yoda. Look on the right behind Carl. Red shirt is gone. Look at Mando's glove. His red light is off. Very next shot, Mando has the chit. His red light is back on again. Very next scene, Mando's walking through the market. Look at his suit. Beige pad on his right leg. Red pad on the left leg. His rifle is over his right shoulder. Very next shot, the red pad is on his right leg. The tan pad is on his left leg. His rifle is on his left shoulder.
I do have Inky, my big cousin.
Here Mando is about to enter the Imperial office. Look at his cape. It's draped over his right shoulder and completely off his left shoulder because of his rifle. Very next shot, he literally just walked through the door and the door closed behind him. The cape is no longer over his shoulder. Very next shot, they show Mando. His cape is now draped again over his right shoulder. Mando steps into the office. You can see that the cape is totally off of his shoulders. It cuts the Imperial boss, and then it cuts back to Mando. Now his cape is over his right shoulder. Very next shot, cape is off of his shoulders. Very next shot, different angle. You can see the cape is not on either shoulder. Here, wide angle, he's walking towards the desk. The cape is not on his shoulder.
Grief Karga said you were coming.
What else did he say?
He said you were the best in the parsec.
Keep that in mind. It is very important that he said you are the best in the parsec. The point here is that Mando, between his ship, his armor, his gadgets, his weaponry, his story, and now confirmed with being called the best in the parsec, has experience. He's not brand new. He didn't start doing this yesterday. He is seasoned as a Mandalorian and a bounty hunter. This is important because there are several conflicts where 1 second it's like he's total noob, and then the next second he's Mr. Veteran. He has experience because this comes up time and again later where there's people that want to argue, but he's new. He doesn't know what he's doing, and no, that's not true. He has a lot of experience, and they mention it throughout several episodes.
No!
Drop your weapons.
No, pardon. Sorry, I didn't mean to alarm.
This is Dr. Pershing. Please excuse his lack of decorum. His enthusiasm outweighs his discretion. Please lower your blaster.
Have them lower theirs first.
We have you 4-1.
I like those odds.
They are once again insinuating that the Mando's a badass. I also want to point out Dr. Pershing has glasses. No one in Star Wars has glasses. He's the first person in all of Star Wars to wear glasses. Very next shot, Mando's about to reach the desk. A side door opens and Mando gets startled. The cape is over his shoulder again. Next shot, Dr. Pershing comes out of the door. Mando, startled, grabs his weapons. The cape is not on his shoulder again.
He also said you were expensive, very expensive. Please sit.
Warner gets up from the table, comes around to settle down the Mandalorian. Just a moment ago, I showed you Mandalorian with his weapons. There was 2 stormtroopers right up in his face, one behind him and one up close in front of him. Now look at the position of the stormtroopers. They are far away from him. Also, the cape is not on his shoulder. Very next shot, cape is over his right shoulder. A moment ago, the stormtroopers were across the room. Now they're back up close in his face. In fact, now there's two in front of him. Very next shot, just as this scene had begun, there's a stormtrooper right in front of him pointing his blaster right close to the Mandalorian. Just a few moments ago, he was across the room. The cape is not over his shoulder. Very next shot, the cape is back over his shoulder and the stormtrooper that was behind him is now gone. Werner tells Mando that he knows he's the best around and that he's very expensive. The cape is not over his shoulder. Very next shot, the cape is back over his right shoulder. He tells Mando to please sit. The stormtroopers lower their weapon, Mando starts to holster his pistol, and the cape is not on his shoulder. Mando just holstered his blaster. The cape is back over his shoulder. Just after holstering his blaster, Mando starts to lower his rifle. As you can see, he's holding the trigger with his left hand and he leans it over to the right into his right hand so that the tip, the barrel, the tuning fork cattle prod is facing to the right of Mando. Also notice the red light is on his glove. Throughout most of this confrontation, the red light has been off. Very next shot, Mando's about to sit down. Now the tip of his rifle is pointing to the left, and he sits down and puts the rifle in his lap. Also notice the distance of the stormtroopers. See how far away they are, and they're back in the original position from when this entire scene began. Just a moment ago, these two were up in his face. Mando sits down and the Imperial slides a cloth onto the table. He unfolds the cloth and there's a Beskar block there. Notice the block. It has two lines at the top. The top line is longer or wider than the bottom line. There's nothing at the bottom. It's just the two lines at the top of this Beskar block. Mando proceeds to pick up the Beskar block. The two lines have disappeared. Now the block has swirly designs in it, and the bottom right has an Imperial symbol stamped into it. Next shot, the bar has now reverted back to the original with the two lines and no Imperial symbol. They now switch the angle of the shot from the Imperial's view. You can see the Mandalorian does not have the cape on his shoulder and he is holding the Beskar block. This is also an important moment because they mentioned that they want the asset brought in alive. The angle switches to Werner. He mentions that I understand bounty hunting is complicated and that it is acceptable if the asset is brought back dead, although they prefer it alive. Look at the left window, then scroll your eyes over to Mando's helmet. If you look closely, you can see through Mando's helmet. There's a little blue tint there. The angle is his head is tilted down a little bit and you're seeing through his T-visor. So apparently Mando sees everything in that bluish tint. Also note, he is holding the bar with the two lines on it. Next shot, you can see that the Mando is holding the Beskar block and the lines are now facing Werner. The cape is also not on his shoulder. Next shot, the lines are back facing the Mando. And then the very next shot, the brick has disappeared. There's nothing in his hand. Next shot, guess what? There's the brick again with the lines. You can also see again through his mask, through the visor, at the window. Mando asks the Imperial for the chain code of the bounty. The brick has disappeared again. The Imperial has both hands on the table. Pay attention to his right hand. He's sliding the Beskar brick onto the table. Both hands are on the table. Next shot, as he's revealing the brick, his hand is under the table. Next shot, hand is back on the table. After Mando picks up the brick, the scene with the Imperial symbol. Both hands are off the table.
Beskar?
Go ahead. It's real. This is only a down payment. I have a container of Beskar waiting for you upon delivery of the asset.
Alive.
Yes, alive. Although I acknowledge that bounty hunting is a complicated profession. This being the case, proof of termination is also acceptable for a lower fee.
That is not what we agreed upon.
I'm simply being pragmatic.
Let's see the puck.
I'm afraid discretion dictates a less traditional agreement. We can only offer you a tracking fob.
What's the chain code?
We can only provide the last 4 digits.
Their age. That's all you can give me?
Yes, they're 50 years old. We can also give you last reported positional data. Between that and the fob, a man of your skill should make short work of this.
It just doesn't make sense. You're trusting this guy to do the bounty for you. He's neutral. He's a Mandalorian. He's a bounty hunter. He's not the rebellion. So why wouldn't you just give him the information? Furthermore, why don't you have an entire garrison of stormtroopers go to the last known place and try to get this bounty yourself?
The Beskar belongs back into the hands of a Mandalorian. It is good to restore the natural order of things after a period of such disarray. Don't you agree?
Mando accepts the bounty, gets up to leave. The cape is over his left shoulder. Next shot changes angle. Now you're looking back at the table in front of the Mandalorian. The cape is not on his shoulder. Door opens. Mando's about to walk out. The cape is now on his right shoulder. Mando leaves the office and starts walking through the market. The rifle is slung over his right shoulder. Tastes like chicken. Next shot. The rifle is slung over his left shoulder. No cape. While we technically don't know how long Mando's walking for, or how far from the office to the market, or how big the market is from one side to the other, it's all within a few seconds. He leaves the office, walks through the market, and then comes to a doorway, looks around real quick, and walks in the doorway. Here he's looking over his shoulder before he goes in the doorway. Keep in mind, there are people all around him that see him. He stands out. He's a Mandalorian with a big rifle on his back. People all around him. It's not like he's hidden. It's not dark out. Here you see him from the opposite angle. He's walking in the doorway. Literally, the only thing there is a sheet hanging over the doorway. So not only did everybody see him go in there, but the only thing in the doorway is a sheet. There's no kind of security warning, a bell, a camera, anything. It's just an open doorway in a highly populated, heavy traffic market. So moments ago, he leaves the office, takes a short walk through a market, comes to a door with a drape on it, and walks down a short staircase. And here he is in the tunnels where all the Mandalorians are. This is important because they state that they have to hide, that only one can go up to the surface at a time. Yet any curious kid, stormtrooper, everyone that sees him walking through the market, standing out like a sore thumb, looking around, pulling a sheet to the side and walking down, and nobody knows where the Mandalorians are. You can see the staircase that he literally just walked down, and here he is in this tunnel with window skylights looking down, no less, and there's all these Mandalorians hanging out for anyone to just find or attack or do whatever they want to. You could drop a grenade through the skylight and kill them all. Furthermore, with the open windows, no one hears them talking or making noise. Nobody sees them. This is supposed to be a tunnel, yet there's openings to the surface right there. So the Mandalorian walks down some stairs, down a short hallway, and then there's this whole armory where there's a blacksmith type female Mandalorian. It's really pretty silly that no one knows this is down here. No one just accidentally frolics down in here and discovers them. They're smelting all kinds of metal, and there's no smell or smoke or heat or any reason why anybody would look or check or ask. Here they introduce the armorer. He comes to visit her and get something made with a piece of Beskar that he gets as a down payment for his new bounty.
This was gathered in the Great Purge. It is good it is back with the tribe. A pauldron would be in order. Has your signet been revealed?
Not yet.
Soon.
She mentions his signet, which he doesn't have one yet, and implies that he has to discover it and or earn one. So they make this dramatic scene of the armorer opening all these doors, and she's got all these tools to craft armor and items out of different metals. And she grabs like these tongs, puts the Beskar steel slab in the tongs, and then uses the tongs to lay the slab onto a piece of metal, like a big plate. She then proceeds to turn and hit a button, and then the Beskar plate starts to melt. If the plate isn't hot to melt the Beskar steel bar, then why did she need tongs to set it on the plate? Why didn't she, with her hand, just set the bar of steel on the plate and then hit the button to activate the heat to melt it? If you're just watching and not paying attention, you're like, okay, yeah, it's hot. She puts it on the plate. That's why she needs tongs. But if you actually watch what she does, there's no reason for her to use the tongs. There's not open flames. There's not smoke or heat. It's just a plate. She sets down the steel and then hits a button to activate the heat that melts it. So the steel melts, it comes down this channel as liquid and into something like a mold. If you have a mold, it would cool, you would remove the steel from the mold, and it would be good to go. That's why it's a mold. But yet, they make the mold, she takes the steel out, and then to give you again the impression of she's a blacksmith, she starts pounding on the steel like she's shaping it and crafting it, when there's no need, because she just poured the steel into a mold, and all she had to do is let it cool and pull it out, and it's done. It's just silly.
This is extremely generous. The excess will sponsor many foundlings.
That's good.
This little slab of Beskar steel that he has is maybe the size of an iPhone or a large cell phone, maybe like a Galaxy Note. It's not very thick or deep, about the depth of a big cell phone, and with the case, because cell phones of course are very thin these days. It seems strange to me that block has any excess, because even if you melt it down and make it thinner metal, it's curved and a much bigger surface than the slab that it begins with. Outside of that, she says, oh, it's very generous, as if there's like this ton of extra Beskar left over. And it just doesn't seem to me that there would be much, if any, excess. Here Mando lands on the Bounty's planet. I want you to notice where his ship is parked, how it is surrounded by rocks and cover. Look at the position of his ship and the fact that it is surrounded by cover all around. To the right of the ship, yes, there's some opening there, but in general, it's behind this mountain. It's in cover. Remember how the ship is parked. If Mando now opens the rear ramp, not only does he not have the space to extend the ramp all the way down, but if he were to walk out, he would simply walk into the face of that rock wall. The back of his ship is facing the rock wall. Next shot, Mando walks out of his ship with the ramp down, and it's a wide open area. So he walks out of the ship looking at the tracking fob, which is beeping. He starts to use his scope to look around a wide open area. Just a moment ago, his ship was backed up against a rock wall. The ship has magically turned and changed position for him to walk out and look around in his scope at an open area. Mando scans the area and he sees two blurgs in the distance. Here he is zoomed in on one of them. Very next shot, you can see him standing out in the open area and scanning the open area. His ship and ramp would be to his back, whereas when he first landed, the ramp of his ship would be facing the rock wall. Instead, he walked out to an open area. He was just looking at a blurg and there's nothing around him. He starts looking through his scope again, and just moments later, a blurg pops up running at him. Look at that mouth of teeth. Those are huge teeth and a lot of them. So if that were to bite you, it would probably clean take off your arm, at least dent your armor and do major damage. Mando literally has a perfect shot down the throat of the blurg. He does not take the shot. He simply watches the blurg run up on him. A seasoned vet would have instinctively shot and killed the blurg right then and there. Without thinking, you see a huge mouth of teeth coming at you, you're going to react, especially if you're a skilled bounty hunter. Mando does not react. He could have literally shot the blurg in the mouth down his throat, but he chose instead to now engage him close range with a flamethrower. If nothing else, he could roll out of the way, jump, do anything, but he lowers his rifle, chooses to stand there, and attempts to use his flamethrower. You should be checking your surroundings, and you have a helmet that can pick up all kinds of things with sensors, and yet you're looking at blurgs through the scope of your rifle. He didn't hear it, he didn't see it. This thing just walks up on him and tackles him. After getting jostled all around, and his arm should have been ripped out of the socket, he manages to get free by punching the blurg in the eye. And instead of rolling out of the way, trying to jump, move, dive, do anything, he stands there, and naturally the blurg grabs him again, only this time he gets the other arm. At this point, Mando should have two completely broken arms, if nothing else, all punctured and bleeding, chewed up. He should be in extreme pain, yet he's perfectly intact. His suit isn't even ripped. Fortunately for Mando, Quill shoots a tranquilizer dart into the blurg, and it falls asleep. Mando's stuck with his left arm inside the blurg's mouth, and here comes the second blurg. Now look at Mando's right hip. Look what's there. His blaster. Rather than just reaching for his blaster and immediately gunning down the second blurg coming at him, which he now is aware that he's under attack. He knows what kind of attack because he just got attacked by a blurg. So instead of, whether instinctively or logically, grabbing his his blaster and shooting at the second blurg to try to slow it down or stop it, what does he do? He just puts his arm up. Oh no, don't eat me. This is not what Mandalorians do. This is not what bounty hunters do. Different angle. Again, instead of just grabbing your blaster and gunning down the blurg, you're laying there with your hand up like, oh, please don't hurt me. He could have thrown an explosive. He could have used then his flamethrower. He could have used all kinds of gadgets. He could have tried to roll out of the way, or most logically, grab your blaster and shoot at the damn blurg. Instead, he chose to just put his hand up and think that that was going to do anything. And here we are with him on his back, should have lost both arms and should be dead at this point. He's very lucky that Quill had stunned these blurgs because he should be dead already from the beginning of this show.
Thank you.
You are a bounty hunter.
Yes.
I will help you. I have spoken. Many have passed through. They seek the same one as you.
Did you help them?
Yes, they died.
Well, then I don't know if I want your help.
You do. I can show you to the encampment.
What's your cut?
Half.
Half the bounty to guide? Seems steep.
So a bunch of others, assuming bounty hunters and whoever, have come to this planet and tried to go after the same bounty. So that brings up several questions. How long has this bounty been on this planet? And if it's been there this long, and the Empire knows where it is because they gave the Mandalorian a tracking fob, why didn't the Empire just send a few TIE fighters or a garrison of stormtroopers to go get this bounty? The Empire would just go in, occupy the place, and take the bounty. As you will see much later, that's exactly what they do anyways.
Half of the blurg you helped capture.
The blurg, you can keep them both.
No, you will need one. To ride the way is impossible to pass without a blurg mount.
Quill is the one that stunned the two blurgs, so technically they're his blurgs. What investment or ownership would the Mandalorian have when the Mandalorian was all but eaten by the blurgs? It's not even his blurg to give away. Quill says, you'll need it because it's the only way that you can get across the terrain. Let's rewind. Just a few minutes ago, the Mandalorian lands not far from Quill's camp in a damn spaceship. But yet, the only way you're going to get across this planet is on a blob of an animal with short, stubby legs and a huge mouth that almost ate you. And you need to have this blurg so that you can get across the planet to your bounty. You have a spaceship. One could argue that he doesn't want to draw attention in the ship. Okay, fly low. And although it would probably be smart to just attack the camp with your big guns on your spaceship, if for whatever tactical reason you don't want to do that, at least fly close to your target, park your ship, and then walk half a mile away. Whatever. Why are you taking this big trek on blurgs when you have a spaceship? These gaps aren't so big that you couldn't just hop over them. Maybe Quill, that's all of 3 feet tall, couldn't make it, but Mando could very easily, he could almost step over half of these gaps. They could have just had Quill say, hey look, I can't get across this terrain like you, I'm too small, so I have to use a blurg. Do you have an alternative? Oh, we could use your spaceship. Here's another thing. They could have loaded the blurgs on the spaceship, flown closer, and then not even have to walk the last mile. They could then blurg it to the camp. Instead, he leaves his spaceship unguarded to ride a blurg across this terrain.
I don't know how to ride blurg.
I have spoken.
Here Mando is trying to learn how to ride the blurg. He's on his ass like he is most of the show. For being a Mandalorian and a bounty hunter, he certainly is on his ass all the time. So Mando tried to mount the blurg, of course got tossed on his ass again, then says he wants to quit, which again is not what a Mandalorian would do, nor a bounty hunter. This guy wants to constantly quit.
Perhaps if you removed your helmet.
Perhaps he remembers I tried to roast him.
This is a female. The males are all eaten during mating.
The Mandalorian has to learn how to ride a blurg. You have a spaceship. They waste a few minutes of time in this episode of the Mandalorian trying to mount and learn how to ride a blurg because it's so important and it's the only way to get across this terrain.
I don't have time for this. Do you have a land speeder or speeder bike that I could hire?
No, but you do have a spaceship, right? Mandalorian bounty hunter?
You are a Mandalorian. Your ancestors rode the great mythosaur. Surely you can ride this young foal.
You're a Mandalorian. You guys fought and rode mythosaurs, and yet you're getting manhandled by a blurg. So then he goes back. He walks up to the blurg, and you'll recognize this part by when he says, easy, easy. Look at his pauldron, the new pauldron he got made by the armorer. It's on his right shoulder, our left. Next shot, oopsie. The pauldron's on his left shoulder, our right. Look at his right shoulder. It's now the red pauldron. Also, his blaster is on his left hip. Very next shot, the pauldron's back on his right shoulder. Look on his right hip. His blaster is back on his right.
Easy. Easy. All right. Settle down. Whoa. Settle.
1 second he's getting tossed around. All of a sudden, the Mandalorian becomes the blurg whisperer. Just walks up to it, says, easy, easy. She settles down. He jumps on her back, and all of a sudden it's all good.
That is where you'll find your quarry. They do not belong here. Those that live here come to seek peace. There will be no peace until they're gone.
Then why do you help?
I have never met a Mandalorian. I've only read the story.
So then Mando, the next scene you see him, he's walking up a ridge to get a view of the encampment. One would think that Mando's blurg would be left here for when Mando's finished. He would tie it off to a rock or something and have the blurg there. But apparently, Quill takes the blurg with him. That doesn't make a lot of sense. How is Mando supposed to get back? Furthermore, why doesn't Quill wait for him to guide him back? He went through this whole thing of making Mando come out here on a blurg, and then he just takes off with the blurgs. Furthermore, look behind Mando. There's all that empty space where he could have parked his spaceship. So they reach the target area and have a short conversation. Then Quill points him to where he needs to go and basically says his goodbyes. And he just turns and puts his back to Mando and just kind of sits there. He doesn't ride off or do anything, which is very strange. Look closely at the buildings and the layout of the buildings. There is a fountain in the center. The buildings are in somewhat of a U shape. So the main big building is there in the back, left to right, and then there's these other smaller buildings pointing towards the Mandalorian. It looks like a big U, fountain in the center. Also take note of the shadows. It's as if the sun is on the right side. The shadows are all being cast to the left. Look just to the left of each building, you're going to see the shadows. Just remember the basic layout, the U shape, and the shadows. The shadows are to the left, and the main building is to the rear. So if you were walking out of the main building, looking at Mandalorian, the shadows would be to your right. Mando then proceeds to pull out his scope. Mando puts the scope up to his left eye and starts to look over the camp. Now that he's looking through his magic scope, look, a bunch of enemies appear. There's a bunch of mercenary thugs here around the fountain. First there were none, now there are 5. It cuts back to Mando. He moves the scope away from his left eye, looks with just his eyes, and then puts the scope back up to his visor, and now it's more in the center, or you could argue he's looking through his right eye. Maybe he has 2 really good eyes, but just instinctively, when you look down a sight or through a scope, you have your strong eye, your preferred eye. Whether you're right or left-handed doesn't matter. You have a preferred eye that you would look through a scope with. So instinctively, if he at first uses left eye, it doesn't really make sense for him to switch to his right eye. But let's just argue both of his eyes are very strong and he likes to switch up for whatever reason. He began with the left eye, pulled the scope away, now he puts it up to his right eye. While he's looking through the scope with his right eye, IG-11 shows up. IG droids are very notorious assassin droids. They are very lethal, very rare, and very dangerous. Everyone knows this, especially bounty hunters and guild members. Now the question becomes, where did he come from? Did he park his ship miles away and walk this whole way in? Or did he sneak up in his ship? How come his ship isn't detected? I doubt that IG-11 parked several miles away and walked all the way here. He probably flew fairly close to the camp and parked. As soon as it cuts back to Mandalorian, the scope is over his left eye. He was just looking with his right eye. Why aren't you just using your helmet? Your helmet has zoom and infrared and all kinds of things. He has all these gadgets, and in particular, his helmet has all kinds of sensors, and he's using the scope on his rifle and this miniature telescope to look at things, when all he has to do is look through his helmet that he's always wearing anyways. IG-11 is walking into the camp, and the Mandalorian sees him and says,
Oh no, bounty droid.
tactically, why would you have a problem with this? Why wouldn't you let the droid just go in there and clean up as much as he could? If he gets killed, oh well, what do you care? He's a droid. Best case scenario, he could clear out the whole camp or half the camp or whatever he does, draw them out. It's to your advantage that he's going into the camp like that.
Droids.
Just the first few seconds that we see IG-11 is the best part of the entire chapter. He comes in, he's spinning all around, taking out these thugs. It's pretty awesome. He's definitely the highlight of the show so far in this episode. IG-11 takes over the show within all of 3 to 5 seconds. He's done more and cooler stuff than the Mandalorian has done in the past half an hour or so that we've been watching him. Look behind IG. On both sides, there's rock hills with a path down the center. So IG just walked right up into this camp. Nobody saw him until he was right on top of the camp. So why couldn't Mandalorian have flown fairly close, parked behind those rocks, and then come over the hill or down the center just like IG's doing? IG had no problem getting here, but Mando had to go through a whole blurk thing instead of just flying to this base. Top of the screen is where IG walked into the encampment from that path between the rock walls. That means the main building that was going left to right is at the bottom of our screen, off screen. Look at the shadows. The shadows are going to the left. They should be off to the right. The sun has now moved from the left side of this camp to the right side in a matter of seconds. Why does this occur? Because they filmed the scene earlier in the day and then they picked up more shots of this scene later in the day. The sun is now on the opposite side of the set. If this is not a real-time set and they're doing it in their 360 dome set, then this is still a screw up because the lighting crew, Favreau, the techs, everyone should realize that the shadows are on the wrong side of the courtyard. All the shadows should be to the right. Instead, the shadows are now to the left, showing you that several hours have passed because the sun has now gone across the sky and is on the opposite side of the buildings. Also take note, 4 dead men around the fountain, 1 dead guy to the right behind the cart in front of the doorway. Just a moment ago, when IG entered the camp, he killed everyone around the fountain and around the camp. At the end of that little squabble, he gets shot in the shoulder, turns around and shoots a guard behind him. You can see the path behind him in the distance where he walked into the camp. So there should be a dead guard here at the entrance of the camp. Looking at the courtyard, look at the top right of the inner section. Follow the shadow all the way to the top of the image. Where's the dead body? The last guy that he shot at the entrance to this encampment. Mando manages to sneak his way down into the encampment. He is then behind a pillar and he decides to pop out and say, "Hey, IG." First, look at his armor. Top left. Do you see that massive dent that came from nowhere? Second, why would you just jump out from behind a pillar? Yell at an assassin droid. You, of all people, Mandalorian, know what an IG unit is. Maybe someone watching this has no clue what IG-88 was, but that is the most lethal of robots, and Mandalorian is well aware. And he just comes jumping out from behind a pillar, yelling at IG, expecting him to have a good reaction. Not to mention, 3 seconds ago, he was just in a skirmish fighting a bunch of mercenaries. So for all IG knows, you're just another one of them. Rather than calling out to him from behind a pillar, saying something, "Hey, I'm in the guild, let's talk," he just jumps out and yells,
IG unit, stand down!
like an IG is going to listen to any orders you have to give it. So naturally, the IG does the logical thing and shoots the crap out of Mando. So Mando takes IG's shot in the top right of his armor. Remember that magical dent that was there from nowhere? Well, here is the shot that created the dent that was there before the shot. Now that Mando got knocked on his ass, he then decides to pull out a fob and say,
I'm in Join the guild.
You are a guild member? I thought I was the only one on assignment.
Why didn't you behind cover say, hey, IG, I'm a bounty hunter. I'm here to collect the same bounty. Let's talk. Let's work out something. Instead of jumping out, yelling at an assassin droid and expecting things to go well. To the right of the cart, by the doorway, there's a guy laying there dead. Just to the left of the cart, opposite of those boxes, you see a guy laid out, rifle to his side on the right. Both of his legs are flat. He's there between the cart and the fountain. Now we are looking from the other angle at the main building in the background. Look to the left, in front of the cart there. Not only is the dead body moved, but he's got his knee up, bent. A moment ago, he was flat. Look at IG in front of the fountain. A moment ago, he was facing the main red door, the main building. Now he is facing us.
Unless I am mistaken, you are as of yet empty-handed.
This is true.
I have a suggestion.
Proceed.
We split the reward.
This is acceptable.
Great. Now let's regroup out of harm's way and form a plan.
I will, of course, receive the reputation merits associated with the mission.
Can we talk about this later?
So sometimes in life, you need to team up with people. The enemy of my enemy is my ally. Fine. But in general, a Mandalorian, a real one, isn't going to make a pact with a IG droid unless it's absolutely necessary. Nor is he going to say, well, I'll give you half the bounty. Granted, you could always just double cross him later, but the point is that the Mandalorian is constantly way too friendly and way too trusting. Throughout the season, he's constantly trusting people and making pacts and teaming up with people, and it's just not realistic that you would go out of your way to do so as a Mandalorian or as a bounty hunter. At this point, as far as they both know, everyone's dead in the camp. They haven't searched all the rooms. They don't know who's there. So for all they know, there's not even anyone left. Mando 2 seconds ago just jumps out and surprises IG and gets shot. Yet now that they've spoken and it appears everyone's dead, Mando goes to hide under cover. It's kind of backwards logic if you ask me. Look at the ground. All the shadows are missing. There were shadows everywhere. Also, look to the left of the cart. There's the tower, then the arch, and Mando. Behind that tower should be a dead body from just moments ago. They showed the view from up above looking from the main building, and to the right of the cart, or in this angle, the left of the cart, there was a dead body there in front of the door behind that tower. He is now missing. IG walked into the camp, took everyone out, and he is a notorious assassin droid. It's very strange that Mando comes up late, jumps out at IG and surprises him, and then Mando says, hey, let's split the bounty. And IG's like, yeah, sure, that's acceptable. That doesn't even make sense. An IG unit right then and there would be like, you better step off or I'll kill you myself. He wouldn't have negotiated when he just got done killing everybody. At this moment, there's no danger. Why would he even negotiate with Mando? If it were to tactical advantage, fine. If they were being bombarded and he had no choice, fine. But IG walked into the camp and has everything under control, yet he's willing to relinquish half of the bounty. Why? Terrible story writing, that's why. So now after they talk for a few moments, a bunch of thugs start coming out from different doorways and the roofs, and now there's a little bit of danger. Fine, they're being attacked from different angles. Now it makes sense for them to team up. Now it makes sense for IG to compute and say, oh, okay, tactically, this Mandalorian can help me. Now it makes sense for him to join forces.
I require an answer if I am to proceed. Alert, alert, alert.
The Mandalorian's cutting across cover, and as he's going across, a large steel door opens behind him, and you can even hear the door. The Mandalorian seems oblivious to this, although I guess he's a little bit busy shooting and getting shot at. These big steel doors open behind you and you have no reaction. Then an alien comes out, and rather than the alien tackling him, shooting him, punching him, the alien just kind of walks up behind him and just kind of pushes his shoulder, which makes no sense whatsoever. Why wouldn't you knife him in the back, shoot him in the back, tackle him, put him in a headlock, throw a grenade at them? The thug just literally comes out and pushes him in the shoulder. When all the other ones are attacking and trying to get to him, this one comes out right behind him with all the advantage of coming out of this doorway and just kind of nudges his shoulder.
He's in there.
Affirmative.
On the left is the archway where Mando was just taking cover. There's that tower that was right behind it. There's the cart. So basically where IG is standing from earlier, there should be a body there in front of the door. The guy that is in front of IG has his knee still kind of bent, but he's like on his side now as opposed to his knee up straight in the air. Where IG is, there is supposed to be a dead body. Instead, that body has now moved to the far right of the screen behind the cart. Mando is just behind the tower. He's moving from the archway behind the tower and they're moving across. Bodies are now moving around in this battle. So they're making their way across the courtyard and Mando identifies the door that the bounty is in. IG had just now gunned down the body on the left. Notice there are 2 barrels and that body is just to the left of the 2 barrels. Then a bunch of more bandits come out, which complicates the situation. Mando then takes cover and states the obvious. There's too many, and IG all of a sudden says, oh well, we're screwed, I'm going to self-destruct. It's not very logical. Remember that this is not only a droid that's very calculating, but an IG unit that is an assassin droid. He's like a Terminator, meant to keep fighting until the end, and for whatever reason, all of a sudden, he wants to give up.
Whoa, you're what?
Manufacturer's protocol dictates I cannot be captured. I must self-destruct.
Do not self-destruct.
Why wouldn't you go out, fight to pretty much the death, and then blow yourself up? And you could also run into a crowd of these guys and blow yourself up that way, at least take them out. Why are you going to behind cover in a corner blow yourself up when you're not even getting shot at or damaged? It doesn't make any sense. They literally go from 1 second killing all these people, they have the situation under control, to now some more bandits come out and IG wants to blow himself up. While it's a little bit comical, it's very illogical. It just doesn't make sense. It makes sense later when he's injured and when the odds get much worse. But I just found it strange that at this point of the battle, he's like, oh, well, we're behind a corner and I've got to self-destruct. A common theme that we see in all Disney Star Wars is people just give up all the time. The Mandalorian was ready to give up with the blurgs. Now you've got IG-88 just ready to give up when they have been killing everybody and they're behind cover. He's like, oh, well, we're outnumbered, so I got to blow myself up. And this also goes to Luke Skywalker and a lot of other characters that just give up. I don't know what is this mentality in Disney Star Wars that everyone just gives up, because that's not what Star Wars was. That was the whole point of Star Wars, is they didn't give up and they were able to take out the Empire. Meanwhile, we're here in the future, better technology, more knowledge of the world, the Empire has been taken down, and everybody wants to give up. It's like they want to create these self-defeating characters in Star Wars now, and it doesn't make sense. It's always the male characters that are self-defeating.
Cover me!
Mando tells IG not to self-destruct, let's fight. He tells him to cover, and he runs across to the doorway, turns his back to the firefight, and starts messing with the door. Why you would turn your back to a bunch of mercenaries shooting at you makes zero sense. Why not stay behind cover, help IG, dwindle down the numbers, and then worry about the door? The bounty isn't going anywhere. Why would you turn your back? As you can see, there's shots going right around Mando. Why would you do this? Mando is constantly putting himself into danger, and this is a seasoned Mandalorian bounty hunter, making the dumbest decisions constantly. Look here, just to the left of Mando, you can see the sparks of a shot that, of course, landed right next to him and didn't hit him right in the back. So naturally, he keeps fiddling with the door, trying to hotwire the door instead of turning around and fighting. On the left, you see sparks. More shots are going right next to Mando all over the place. He's getting shot at, and he doesn't turn around to fight. He's just standing here playing with the door. Even if you get the door open, you could get shot going into the door. There could be more mercenaries inside. And even if you manage to open it and you guys sneak in and close the door, then what? You've just trapped yourself in this building with all the still alive and angry mercenaries outside. So what good does it do you to get inside, get the bounty, when you're just going to be trapping yourself in a corner? If you have any kind of tactical knowledge and strategy, You wouldn't be standing out in the open with your back to people firing lasers at you. If you're a cop, a SWAT, a military, a paintballer, a video gamer, anybody, you know you don't just stand out in wide open with your back turned getting shot at. And this is a Mandalorian that has his own show that is supposedly a badass, and he's just standing out trying to hotwire a door.
There's too many!
There's too many, yet you're a Mandalorian with all kinds of gadgets and explosives on your body. And here we go with the self-defeating, well, there's too many. What are we gonna do? A Mandalorian and an IG assassin droid, and they're both wanting to give up. Is this consistent with Star Wars bounty hunters? Think of Aurra Singh, think of Jango Fett, think of Bosk. These guys wouldn't just be self-defeating. They would chuck a thermal detonator. They would blow up a building. They would fall down on somebody. They would call their ship. They would figure something out. They're going to go down blazing. They're not going to sit in a corner and be like, oh, there's too many, we're screwed. When you have all these gadgets and munitions on you, you can clearly see them in plain sight on your suit, and you're not thinking to use any of the stuff that you have.
They got us pinned!
I will initiate self-destruct.
Do not self-destruct! We're shooting our way out!
Again, trying to put in some comedy. I give up. I'm gonna just self-destruct. It's much easier than fighting. I'm a droid with no feelings or emotions. So then the mercenaries now come in with this floaty, heavy turret to try to flush out the Mandalorian and IG-11. Literally, the moment that the big turret gets into position and makes that sound like it's locked into position and the guy stops, both IG and the Mandalorian step out of cover. They both just step right out into wide open with a heavy turret and all these mercenaries all over this camp trying to kill them. They both step out of cover into this wide open area, just waiting to get shot.
Okay. New plan! Draw their fire, I'll take it out!
Acceptable.
Go!
The Mandalorian tells the IG to go out and draw their fire, and the IG unit's like, okay, acceptable, I'll just go ahead and do that. 1 second ago, you're worried about you have to blow yourself up. Now you're just running out, contradicting yourself. IG draws the main fire, and the Mandalorian pops out and shoots his cable and attaches it to the big heavy turret. He then proceeds to pull on it and spins, which makes the gunner like back off of it, like, oh my god, you made the gun spin. And then the Mandalorian shoots the gunner, runs out again into the wide open in the middle of this courtyard and jumps on the turret. Meanwhile, you can see in this screenshot, there's a guy shooting at his back. So the Mandalorian's out in the open, totally exposed with his back to half the mercenaries, and he jumps on this turret. In any other circumstance, he would be so dead right now. So the Mandalorian jumped on the turret, and his momentum made the turret spin around, and as he was spinning, he shoots everybody in this camp. 2 seconds ago, they're totally surrounded. There's a bunch of these mercenaries around. Then the Mandalorian just jumps on this turret, shoots about 5 guys, and the whole battle's over with. There seems to be counting issues, math issues in this show. Look at the distance of the turret. It's not terribly far, but it's a good distance away. It would take several steps for the Mando to get to that turret. Mando says to draw their fire, he'll take out the turret. So IG runs out to draw the fire, and as you can see, he's shot there in the arm. Take note, right behind IG, there's that notch in the wall and the 3 barrels to his right. IG moves to the right across that little hallway on the left and traps himself in this corner, and he gets gunned down by the turret. Notice there's 2 barrels there, and IG is down against this corner. Mando then takes literally 2 steps and jumps on the turret. Just a moment ago, I showed you the distance of the turret to where they were getting shot behind that cover. That was at least a dozen steps away. Somehow, the turret is now right in front of them. Mando jumps on the turret, his momentum makes the turret spin, and he shoots everyone down. Look at the pauldron, it's on his right shoulder. He's about to step off of the turret. He just stepped down from the turret, and now the pauldron is gone. It's the red one on the opposite side. Now the position of the cannon is in the same spot, so the film most likely isn't inverted. This is again a costume problem. They're not paying attention. The second actor has his pauldron on the opposite side, and they filmed this little piece with the other actor. While I don't have a problem with the scene, okay, it's cool, he spins around and kills everyone, he is out in the open. Not one of these guys got a shot off on him. None of them take cover or hide. Look at the top left of the screen. There couldn't have been a guy that just ducked behind that building and waited and then shot Mando. It just seems silly to me that these guys are all out in the open open. They all just sit there to get shot, and nobody even gets a shot off at Mando. Now look at Mando. The scene had just literally skipped, and the pauldron is back on his right shoulder.
Well done. I will disengage self-destruct initiative.
You know, you're not so bad for a droid.
Agreed.
That blaster head looks nasty. You okay?
Running a quick diagnostic. It has missed my central wiring harness.
Is that good?
Yes.
Well, now we just need to get the door open.
So the Mandalorian mentions the blaster hit on the IG unit, and the IG runs a diagnostic and he says, it missed my central wiring. So naturally he's saying his vital parts, which is basically on his right side, but indicating, you know, like my body is where the important guts or wiring is at. This is important in just a few minutes. Look on the bottom left. That is where IG was at. Now you have 3 barrels and a dead mercenary laying there. Earlier in the battle, an enemy came down the left hallway there. IG just shot him down, and you can see there's a body there laying next to the 2 barrels. That is the corner that IG gets cornered in and gets gunned down. You can see the notch to the left. There's the alleyway, 2 barrels where IG gets shot, and there is a body there. As we saw a moment ago at the end of this big battle where he spins around on the turret, where IG was at, there's now a dead mercenary, 3 barrels, and the mercenary that was dead to the left of the barrels that came from the alleyway is now missing. From behind Mando, IG says, well done, and Mando turns around. IG, shot down, has now changed positions. He is to the left across that alleyway. Meanwhile, he was gunned down in that corner where there's now laying a dead mercenary. Mando helps him up. You can see just behind IG, there's the notch in the wall, and to the right of Mando, there's 3 barrels. Where those 3 barrels are is where IG is supposed to be laid out. Now that they've killed everyone, they decide they need to get the door open. They both look at the turret. That makes sense. You have a heavy turret, shoot edges of the door, and the door collapses inwards. But if you're thinking, why would you be shooting into a building where the bounty that you want to keep alive is in? You're running the risk of you yourself killing your prize by shooting the crap out of this door. The Mandalorian is not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
The tracking fob is still active. My senses indicate that there is a life form present.
They're inside this building, they're by the bounty, and the fob is beeping pretty quickly at this point. Now the Mandalorian walks up to what looks sort of like a big egg, and the fob is beeping very quickly, and he starts to clear some netting off of this egg. Now if, as Quill indicated, many have come and died, it seems strange to me that these mercenaries, knowing that a bunch of people, including the Empire and the Bounty Hunter Guild, are after this bounty, that they just have it sitting in a building behind one locked door, not in a vault or heavily guarded. There was one guy in the room with this bounty. Mando's right. There's a doorway there with a ton of sunlight coming in. Maybe instead of brute forcing your way in here with that turret and risking killing your bounty, should you not have walked around the building, looked around? For all you know, you could have dropped right in behind that doorway. Maybe there's a grate, a window. There may have been a much easier way and less dangerous way to come into this room, rather than blasting down the door and risking your bounty. For a bounty hunter, he doesn't think much. Note also, Mando has the tracking fob in his left hand. Mando follows the beeps of the tracking fob to the egg. As he gets closer, it starts to beep even faster. While the fob is just out of view, you can see his left arm is reached out, and he does indeed have the fob in his hand. In the next shot, you can hear the fob beeping wildly, and yet his left hand is empty. He didn't put it away or do anything, and it's still beeping. From one shot to another, now his hand is empty. Furthermore, the beeping just stops. He doesn't shut it off or put it away because it's not even in his hand. But yet the beeping was still going off. Without thinking about it, talking about it, scanning the egg, doing anything, using thermal vision, having IG check, he just proceeds to open the egg. While you know that the bounty is in there, it could be full of explosives, gas, whatever, and he just opens the egg. And now we meet the little booger. Yeah, he's cute. Whatever.
Wait, they said 50 years old.
Species age differently. Perhaps it could live many centuries. Sadly, we'll never know.
No, we'll bring it in alive.
The commission was quite specific. The asset was to be terminated.
So IG raises his gun as if he's about to kill the Baby Yoda. And just at the last moment, the Mandalorian shoots IG in the head and IG falls over. Now IG says the commission was specific. The acid is to be terminated, which doesn't make any sense. The Imperial boss said, bring him alive. It's an option to bring him dead, but to bring him alive. Pershing also said, we need him alive. Obviously, they want to study him. So it doesn't make sense that IG got instructions to kill him. So either this is a plot hole or someone else sent IG out to get the bounty. But at the end of the day, whoever's looking for this child logically would want him alive. What do you gain from killing him? Whereas you have a lot to gain, as we find out later, he's special. It just doesn't make a lot of sense that one bounty would be to bring him alive, and then the other bounty specifically says to kill him. Naturally, it could be someone else sending him. But who? Who knows about this asset? The only other person we know that knows about this is Moff Gideon, who we meet later, and Moff Gideon wants him alive. So it's very strange that IG is under orders to terminate the baby when everyone else is under the impression of wanting to keep him alive. Maybe in season 2 we find out something else, but it just doesn't add up for IG to have an order of executing the asset. So IG is about to execute Baby Yoda, and Mando ends up shooting IG in the head. You can see the gaping hole and the smoke coming out of his head. Now use some logic here. It is a robot. Who says that his brain, his mainframe, or his main memory is in his head? This isn't a human being. If you were building a droid, especially an assassin droid, you would put his most vital parts in a thicker area of his body, most likely his chest, where you would have more armor, more thickness and protection, not in his head. So while it's not a huge problem, fine, maybe his controls are there in his head, it's just kind of funny logic. He's not a human being, so you wouldn't headshot him. Not to mention, IGs are merciless killers. They're like Terminators. They just keep coming. That one headshot, especially after all the other shots he took during this entire battle, and this one headshot takes him out, if you are a master droid builder and you're building something to last and terminate things, I don't think you're going to make it so obvious to put his central controls in his head. Everyone would just be headshotting these droids. It would make much more sense to put him in under thick plate armor in his chest that has a lot more space. You could put a lot more armor around it. Not to mention it would have some protection from insulation and wiring and other things around it. Do you really headshot droids? Yes, in the prequels, a lot of the battle droids get headshotted and they die. But those are papery, worthless droids anyways. But an IG assassin droid, you just headshot him one time and he goes down. Then you got the Mandalorian looking at Baby Yoda and he sticks out his finger like a parent would to a baby, which is just ridiculous. Why would a bounty hunter be doing this? A Mandalorian of all people, cooing at a baby. Yes, he's cute, we get it, but it's just not what a bounty hunter would do. Not a real one, not a Star Wars bounty hunter. What he would have done is shot IG, immediately closed up Baby Yoda's egg, and gotten out of there. Instead, he's hanging out in this room, cooing with the baby, with his back to the door. There's probably got to be a few mercenaries still around. This is a Mandalorian. He is a bounty hunter. He is a killer, and he's often on the move or the run because other people are going to try to kill him and or take his bounties. So from a logic standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense to take possession of another living being and be responsible for it with the type of lifestyle that you have. Your job is to hunt and often kill people. The last thing you need is a little baby Yoda to take care of. Now remember, he didn't choose to use his spaceship to fly over and make the battle much easier. So now he's by himself on foot and has this bounty to deal with, instead of just getting in his spaceship and flying away. So this Mandalorian is not very smart. He seems to forget his own gadgets and equipment right from the beginning. One second he's a badass taking out people in the bar, and then the next second he's having all kinds of adversity. We like our heroes to have challenges. That's not a problem. But Disney just never understands how to get the balance. It's like they 1 minute way overpower you. They do the same thing with Rey. 1 minute they way overpower you and you're able to literally fly. Then the next minute you're all confused and don't even know your own powers. You don't know what's going on. You're all lost. And it's just not consistent. People do go through all kinds of things, but we're not changing from 1 minute to another your behavior and your thought process. And you knew how to do this a minute ago, but now you don't know how to do the other. It's just not consistent, and it just doesn't make sense, especially for a bounty hunter that was raised by Mandalorians. So there's the key problems with episode 1. Not a whole lot happens. It's really the IG-11 show, and then, of course, everyone sees Baby Yoda, and everybody freaked out, and, oh my god, Baby Yoda, and from here on out, it's the Baby Yoda show. That's all anybody cares about, which is also very sad and funny at the same time, that they made this big deal about the Mandalorian show, and the first episode, they made him try to look cool, and as soon as Baby Yoda came here at the end of chapter 1, it was game over because nobody watches the show for the Mandalorian. He's a complete afterthought. This show is literally the Baby Yoda show. There's the main points of chapter 1, The Mandalorian. I'll be going through all the chapters and showing you guys all the problems with The Mandalorian. They start to compound from here. Throughout the next chapters, it starts to get much worse. Not only in the individual chapters, but they start to compound upon each other. That there's inconsistencies from one episode to the next, and it just causes all kinds of problems within the series. This show is the best thing we have gotten from Disney as far as Star Wars is concerned, but that doesn't mean that it's any good. It's just the best of the junk pile that we've gotten. People are so desperate for some good Star Wars that when you see just a glimpse, everybody's like, oh, wow, The Mandalorian is great. I heard someone say it's a 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, but it's not. And if you're saying that, you obviously did not watch the episode or have any kind of critical eye, because just the first chapter has problems. Never mind how everything starts to compound from episode to episode. It gets worse and worse and worse. I'll be pointing out these things and I'll show you. It's not me trying to destroy or hate the show. I, as much as anyone, want some good Star Wars. But just because you give me something that's half decent doesn't mean that I'm going to go out here and say, wow, it's great, because it's not great. It's just better than the trash fire we've been getting. That's all it is. It's really not that special. The Mandalorian is very wishy-washy, and it gets worse and worse as we go along. The Baby Yoda show is really what this is about. And while it's nice to have something new and fairly decent from the Star Wars universe for the first time in many years, it's just not what it could be and what it should be. Favreau, while he's much better than J.J. Abrams, at the end of the day, he's just a fan of the show, like so many others that are involved with the show. But it doesn't mean that he truly understands it.
Like when 3PO's head gets blasted and they all walk by in Empire and they pan over to it and they don't see it. No, I don't remember that.
Filoni is also working on this project, and Filoni's retconning himself between the movies and Clone Wars cartoon and The Mandalorian, and then you've got Mandalorian episodes retconning and interfering with themselves. It's just a huge mess.
Amazing what we get excited about around here. Exactly. Look, a laser!
I want to be optimistic, but now that we have seen the entire first season, it's very easy to judge the overall scope of things and see all the problems. While The Mandalorian is decent and the best thing we've had in a while, it truly is not great as some people claim that it is. It needs a lot of work. It has a lot of holes, and you're going to see as we progress throughout the season, it gets much, much worse. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, coming soon.
There's so many. Has anyone been to them all?
Not likely.
Come on.
Look.
We have hope.
We had each other. That's how we want it.
The Force is strong in my family.
Its energy surrounds us and binds us.
Please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. May the Force be with you.